Hey, what's going on? Hangout Live. It's Drake here. I don't know where Robbie's at. Where you at, Robbie?
I'm here.
There you
When
are.
you hit the button at the same time as me, it kicks me out. So
Does
I
it?
gotta beat you to the punch just a little bit next time.
All right, give me a shiner next time. Welcome to the Hangout Live. Obviously, a very anticipated week for us this week. Let's take a quick look at our sponsors here, who we absolutely adore in every single way. Full Spectrum, Alan, Shannon, and the team over here, Full Spectrum CBD and hemp products. Go onto their site, fullspectrumtx.com, and give them a view and check them out, man. Order some products. They'll take great care of you. They're good people. Backbeat Music, Alexandra, and the team over there in San Angelo. They've got an amazing Grammy-winning award, recording studio upstairs, and you can order online from them as well. And then Media Jaw. Jody Gentry taking care of our Hangout Live website for us. It's the hangout.live. Go on there, check it out, and order your t-shirts and pictures and all that stuff. I think we're going to be doing a raffle soon for a guitar, so there's some fun stuff coming up, and you can.
And we might even add to that raffle. I'm going to throw out blue collar cables for anybody who knows who needs cables. My studio is set up with blue collar cables. It's high end stuff. You can also get all the different, really good quality lower end stuff, but really good quality to high end stuff made in America. Everything, snakes, TRS cable, then you name it. My studio is loaded with it. Definitely worth checking out. BlueCollarCables.com. Get your name personalized. And I'm telling you, I had a cable and somebody tried to walk off with it one time, and I kid you not, my name is on. I was like, oh, yeah, that's not your cable. See that name on there? That's my name.
Nice.
Oh shoot, sorry. Walk off with that cable. And then the other shout out to the
Brad
O'Brien.
and Kim Bandese.
No, they're separate. Their wine, Brad and Kim, their wine is in quarantine.
Oh, okay.
Because of Kim, so that's in quarantine. But I did get some wine from the O'Briens. Darren,
Nice.
Sherry, sent some wine. Not that I'm gonna go crazy drinking too much tonight, but I'll have a glass just to kind of chill and hang out. And I just throw it out there. And let's give a shout out to Mike Gabi. Mike, there's your shout out. Fist bump, buddy.
Thanks, Gabi. We appreciate you, brother. All right, so obviously we've got this guy coming up.
Yeah.
David Ellefson, man, is iconic. Of course, Megadeth. We've got Tom. Tom Hazer is just, dude, his rap sheet is unbelievable. And I think we just welcome to the show.
I think we should bring him in. There's so much to talk about that, why waste another minute listening to us?
That's it. Let's do it right here.
There we go.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on the Hangout Live via Zoom.
What's going on, you guys? What you doing?
What's happening, brother?
You're pretty excited about Zoom.
Yeah.
Like on Zoom!
Zoom! Yeah, it's all that money I spend every month on it. I got to make sure I'm getting it. It's worth So we have got an atrocious amount of stuff to cover in tonight's show. You guys, your careers are just incredible, but I really want to kind of go back and talk about the before Megadeth, before Peavy and you guys meeting, and let's just take it all the way back to the beginning. David, what was the inspiration, brother? Were you always going to be a musician? Was it always rock and roll?
I was. I grew up on a farm in the Midwest, a little town, Jackson, Minnesota, and like everybody, you want to be a fireman, you want to be a policeman, whatever, And one day I heard rock and roll on the school bus radio, and and it was, quite honestly, it was the stuff that's on this album here that we made.
Oh, cool.
Sweet, BTO, early Kiss, first Foreigner record or two, that kind of stuff that was, Chicago, the kind of the heavier, older stuff from Chicago. And, and that just caught my ear. And for whatever reason, the bass, I always say I didn't choose the bass chose me. And I didn't know why. I mean, why the hell would you choose the bass? You know, it's kind of, in a lot of situations, it's sort of a background instrument, you know? And then I realized once I started learning it, you know, a couple of months into it, I go, wait a minute, there's like no bass players around here. Like there's a few drummers, you know, it seems a couple of guitar players, but there's like not a bass player at all. I mean, so like I got called for everything. I got called up into, you know, jazz bands. When I was 12, I started a band with a couple of my, I had an older brother, 2 years older. So I started a band with his friends. And then they called me up to jam with these like 16-year-old guys when I'm 12, you know, like learning Freebird and Stairway to Heaven and, you know, very progressive stuff. So because I got good at it really quick because I was really passionate. I didn't want to do anything else other than just, you know, come home after school, go in the basement. You know, when you're from the Midwest, you have a basement. That's where life happens, you know.
The basement
where you make out with your first girlfriend, you learn how to play bass, you know, you do everything in the basement, you know. And so, you know, that's where I learned the craft, was in the basement of my parents' house on the farm in Minnesota, you know. And then from there, you know, I mean, I picked up the bass at age 11. By 12, I'm in bands, and, you know, here I am at age 55, still kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, you know. So
The irony.
yeah, so I guess this is it, you know.
So you and Tom met over at Peavey, where you were working as an A&R. Tom, your background, brother, you seem like you've had a very blessed, very lucky life.
I don't know about that. Thank you.
Two lives, mind you.
I was born a poor black child. I remember the days singing and dancing. No, look, much like David, I grew up in the Midwest in Wisconsin, you know, kind of a similar, partially rural existence. And I mean, look, there was some luck, but it was a lot of hustle, man. Just like David, I got on a Greyhound bus and moved my ass to LA. I realized there was nothing here for me. I kind of started out the same way. You know, I started as a singer and playing in bands and jumping between bass and guitar, and eventually I kind of just learned how to kind of play everything enough to write songs. But you know, and it's funny, man, I grew up jamming Megadeth songs in my barn in Wisconsin, you know, and seeing David, another kid from the Midwest, and going, holy shit, well, he up and moved to LA, I'm gonna do that. And between that and Motley Crue and seeing everything else in LA, I mean, it was the obvious choice for me too. And I got there a little too late. My career trajectory, I got like 10 bands signed to major labels in 2 years. And somehow I shifted from being a musician to more being on the A&R marketing side. You know, I worked with Limp Bizkit and Stained and Cold and Nine Inch Nails and a billion other bands. But, you know, literally as my career was going up, the music business went, so I had to kind of hustle, and, you know, and that's when I started my own labels. I started Corporate Punishment Records, and we put out like 80 records on that label. And you know, and so again, I was also a writer, and I wrote for a lot of magazines and dabbled in film stuff and management. And it's always been this kind of evolution of, you know, what do I want to do and where do I fit? And again, just like David, it's still the same thing today. You know, I write books. I mean, David wrote a book. I'm writing a book with Chris Poland. You know, I still kind of do some journalism stuff, but I obviously run the labels and do A&R and sing in the band with David now. And I mean, look, I think being in this business is always kind of an evolution, especially the way the business has been for the last 2 decades. I mean, you just kind of have to pivot and watch where it goes and just try and keep up, man. And that's what I've done for, you know, 2 decades, 3 decades.
The key word of evolution being evil.
Yeah. Right.
In fact, maybe that should be the name of our next album, Evolution. You know,
That's badass right there. So obviously, being a fan of rock, you know, reading Circus back in the day.
Yeah, I actually hate rock, for the record. I'm more of like a smooth jazz guy myself.
Well, I probably still at my office today probably have 70 or 80 issues of Circus. So
I do too. Right behind me, I got Circus. I got an issue of Rip right on my desk. I mean, look at this.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool.
It's always here, man. Exclusive, The Politics of Megadeth. When I was 15 years old and I had this magazine, if I'd have known how profoundly that effect would have on my life, man. But I'm surrounded by nerdy 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? That's it.
I love it. So you set out in journalism, but you didn't go to school for it, right?
No, I dropped out of high school. I mean, I didn't go to school for look anything like this business. I honestly, I don't think you can go to school to be. It's like going to school to be a musician. Or I mean, like, look, you can learn some technical skills, but really, just like anything else in this business, you need to learn it kind of trial by fire, man. You know what I mean? I don't think you could. I could have went to school for journalism, I guess, but I just went out and just started writing stuff. And I when I was 16, 15, I started writing for the Press Gazette, the local Gannett Group daily newspaper. And then I slowly figured out by doing that, I could get labels to give me free concert tickets and CDs. And then Bob Chaparty gave me a job writing for his foundation's trade magazine at the time. And it just kind of snowballed. I ended up writing for Metal Hammer and Circus and some of the other magazines as they were kind of in their 90s death throes. And yeah, so it's cool though, man. I love writing. It's one of my passions still. I mean, the written word. I mean, I read a lot of bios. I read a lot of copy. I mean, it's something that just never really goes away. Especially in this business, you're always writing something or coming up with some kind of concept or outlining things. So it's a useful skill to have.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. David, you got a birthday coming up in a couple days, 3 days to be exact, right?
I do. I finally get a day off. And it's funny, I was trying to take a day off and then the schedule filled up again. So, there are no days off in rock and roll,
There will be no break.
There's no days off in rock and
Oh,
roll.
and we're always, my birthday was yesterday, so our birthdays are 4 days apart. So we're always together. Last year we were on tour in Europe on our birthdays, and this year, I mean, we'll kind of be together. We're going to celebrate next week, I think, but we always kind of the last few years, we always seem to sort of be together somewhere on tour or doing something on our birthdays.
Well, happy birthday to both you gentlemen. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So why PV? What brought you to PV, David? I mean,
so a good friend of mine, it turned out to became a friend of mine. He worked at St. Louis Music, and St. Louis Music back in the 80s and into the 90s, they owned brands like Ampeg, Crate amplifiers, and Alvarez guitars. And he had hired a gentleman by the name of Ken Hensley, who was the keyboard player in Uriah Heep. And I saw Uriah Heep and Ken open for my favorite band, Kiss, when I was 13 years old at the Met Center in Minneapolis in 1977. And so as things would go, through my career, as I met Dave, we would, now you go to the NAMM show and they says, oh, closed to the public, yet everybody's there because everybody knows some dude at a music store, so they get free passes.
Right.
Well, so our first drummer, Gar Samuelson, worked. He was a general manager for BC Rich, and he and Chris Poland had a band. They're from Dunkirk, New York, by Buffalo, and they moved to LA, and they had a jazz group there called, kind of a fusion group called the New Yorkers. And they were apparently packing the Troubadour and doing fairly well, but then Motley Crue and Quiet Riot, things in LA would shift. There's punk, and then Van Halen made their way, and then there's Skinny Tie, and then suddenly it's fucking Motley Crue, So when shifts happened in LA, they were monumental, and they pretty much kicked everything else out of the way. So Gar and Chris never did get a record deal. Gar moved on, got a job at BC Rich Guitars. So when I met Dave, I was an avid BC Rich fan. I had a Mockingbird. Dave had his Rich Bitch that he used in those Metallica photos. And Kerry King, when he played with us briefly when we debuted the band up in the Bay Area in 1984, he was a massive BC Rich fan. And so as we transitioned the group, and then it was me, Dave, and Gar in mid 1984, he would sneak me and Dave into the NAMM show, like covertly, like, here's a couple of passes, don't get caught, don't let anybody see you with these, because they're like a couple of long-haired musician guys walking around, and literally they did not let musicians. Like, I remember walking past a booth, and Tom Scholes was there with his son, and he had just rolled out, the Rockman a few years before that.
Right.
And like, he was a musician that was there because he was exhibiting a product, right? But they did not let musicians there. There were no meet and greets, all this shit that happens today. Like, none of that was going on back then. So, and I remember seeing Ken Hensley with Ampeg, and he had his like shark tooth suit on, looking all swank, like hot chicks. Or I was like, that guy's still a fucking rock star, man. You know, and he's working for Ampeg. He's an A&R guy. He's basically the guy that, you know, he's hooking up Gene Simmons and Michael Anthony and all the rock stars with their Ampeg gear. So I took note of that. I was like, huh, that's an interesting day job, you know, because I think when you're in a band, any great band is always on the razor's edge of either blowing up and being huge or falling off the rails into complete abyss and destruction, right? And certainly Megadeth is one of those bands, right? We have a storied career, you know, and we've been on the abyss and on the razor's edge now for 37 years, you know. And it just, that's what it is. So so for almost 20 years, the band's doing great. You know, we're you know, it's bigger and bigger, but you know, we've got our internal stuff, and like every band, and 2002, you know, the band disbands. Dave steps away from the band. I kind of saw it coming, but it was a shock. It was still a shock when it happened. All of a sudden, 2002, I was like, what the hell am I going to do with the rest of my life? You know, so I called Monty Connor, who was at Roadrunner Records at the time. And they had me come out and do some writing with a band that they had called Dry Kill Logic, who was on the label. A guy here in town, Don Salter, owns the Salt Mine Studios. And so, you know, he really saw me as a producer. I did not see myself as an exclusive producer. I get cabin fever being in the studio too long, man. And so through that year, you know, I called my friend Tony Moscow, and he at that point had transitioned over to Petey. I said, hey man, the day came, my band ended. He's like, what the hell happened? You know, and everybody kept saying, don't worry, Mustaine will be back. You guys will be playing again. Don't worry. You know, and I was kind of like, well, maybe, but for now, I got a mortgage to pay and family to raise, and you know, Megadeth. We've made money, but I didn't have live forever money yet, you know.
Right.
So you know, it's you know, people think, you know, you sell 1 million records. It takes $1 million to sell 1 million records. That's why if you sell 10 million, that's $9 million for free on the backs of that million, right? I mean, that's kind of the math, if you will, you know.
Right.
And I learned that on Countdown, you know, because that record went on to sell a couple million in America, probably a couple million more outside of the, you know, the rest of the world. So that record was a moneymaker for us. But, you know, but that was, you know, 10 years earlier, 1992, 93. So, you know, so I got this job working for, so, you know, Tony tells me, he goes, look, man, I just started this contractor gig. I'm working for Petey. I might have something for you. And we talked about the Ken Hensley thing. He goes, look, he said, it was a very successful model of, I had a famous rock star, you know, pimping my gear for me. And I see you doing the same thing. You already use Petey. You've been active with their products. So that's where it started. You know, my first NAMM show with Petey was 2003. Ironically, that was the year I met Eddie Van Halen. They brought Eddie in. And he came to the NAMM show. He was obviously, his products put Petey on the map in a pretty big way, you know. And there was a lot of great products there. So I was calling a lot of honestly the Roadrunner bands, Century Media bands, a lot of the young, hip, up and coming, hard hitting metal acts. And one of the groups was Chimera, and Tom managed Chimera. In fact, I remember our phone conversation because I remember Tom's voice. And it was a very distinctive voice Tom has. And I don't remember what we talked about other than it was fun. It was friendly. And we didn't talk anymore after that. And then by 2010, of course, I came back to playing in Megadeth full time again. And I stepped away from the Petey gig. 2005, I'll let Tom take it from there. 2005, I think it was, Tom called me up about something he was doing with Shocker, what Megadeth participated in.
Yeah,
over to you, Tom.
Over to me. Well, in 2000, so me and David had kind of had some chats when he was at PV. You know, we loved. I mean, I would say this. I don't think David gets enough credit for the levity that he brought to PV. Man, I feel like he was a huge part of the resurgence of PV in the 2000s. And obviously, Eddie Van Halen was a big part of this too. But I mean, we were all those first Chimera records and all the stuff I did with Ben Schigel and Switched. And we were all using those 5150 amps, and we were all using that kind of PV stuff. And all of a sudden, everybody wanted to use PV, and they went from, riders in the 90s saying no PV to everybody I know was playing PV and utilizing them. And so, yeah, that was kind of our first run-ins. And then fast forward, I was doing so I did some special features for with Red Shirt Pictures for Shout Factory and Scream Factory. I did some stuff on People Under the Stairs, Army of Darkness, and then they told me they were doing Shocker, and I was like, well, look, you have to absolutely let me do something on the soundtrack. And obviously, Megadeth famously had "No More Mr. Nice Guy" as the theme on that soundtrack, so they did. They gave me like a $300 budget, and they said, here's no money and you have no time, get it done. So within 2 weeks, I ran around the country. I posseed up. I went to Nashville and interviewed Desmond Child. I had an LA crew that went and interviewed Bruce Kulick and Kane Roberts. And I did a remote interview with David, who is in Phoenix. And I directed and produced this 30-minute documentary called The Music of Shocker. Actually, it's called No More Mr. Nice Guy, The Music of Shocker. And that was kind of mine and David's first run at it. Originally, I hit up Megadeth management. They blew me off, didn't respond to my emails. And then I'm like, this thing does not fly without Megadeth in it. So me and David were friends on Facebook or something. And I hit him up and I said, hey, I know this is crazy, but would you maybe want to sidestep your management and do this interview that I've been trying to get done for 4 weeks, and they're blowing me off? And he hit me back and said, yeah, absolutely. So we did this really cool interview that became the focal point of that. And, after that, we just kind of had a phone call and we were like, so what are you doing now? And we obviously talked about talking before he was at PV and just sort of caught up. And he's like, look, I'm managing this band Dollskin and I'm talking to Megaforce. And, and again, it was just when Altitudes and Attitudes was starting. And, he was talking about doing a label imprint and producing. And I was managing the band Horizon Chaos at the time, doing kind of helping them put their record together and doing some management stuff. And I said, well, look, I got this band Horizon Chaos. The record's almost done. You want to produce some vocals or produce a track on it? So through that, we connected. Within 5 minutes in being in the studio with the band, he's like, dude, I love this band. And I'm like, well, let's put them on that label. So it just turned into this perfect flurry of circumstances where Dave had the idea to start a label. I ran a bunch of labels and done a lot of A&R and done a lot of stuff. And it just kind of gelled into EMP and then Combat and then the Coffee Company and every other ridiculous thing we've done since,
You guys have definitely branched out in a lot of different areas. Obviously, the labels, the Coffee Company, you got the Ellefson Youth Music Foundation,
THC, and the movie stuff. There's movie stuff too.
Yep.
Yeah,
Ellefson Films. I mean, look, we have Ellefson Films, which we have my buddy Drew Fortier was working on kind of a really cool low budget horror movie, and he came to me about it and he's like, hey, what would you guys think about putting this out? And I'm like, being executive producers on it. So we're like, sure, what the hell? So we put together Ellefson Films, and David and Drew have honestly gone and done some convention appearances. I think we're going to premiere it in the spring at a convention. And, so it's been cool. I have a little animation thing I'm doing on the side. It's kind of a little banner thing under Ellefson Studios. And it's really cool, man. We've got Ellefson books now, so again, we just kind of look for these different. Music can only take you so far. You know what I mean? As a revenue stream, as a business model. I mean, look, you got to branch out. You got to look at other things, look at other streams of revenue, other ways where you can be relevant, and other ways that you can just do cool things. And I think that's one thing we've been really great at, is just kind of recognizing, oh, there's this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And it's all, again, like I said before, man, it's all trial by fire. It's like one day it's like, I've never done this before, I have no idea, but it can't be that much different than this. So we just fucking figure it out,
Right.
So Dwellers is the movie you're talking about, right? That's going to premiere next year?
Absolutely.
Cool.
That's badass. So we've got a production assistant that wants to come in and ask a couple questions from the audience here. So we'll bring Jessica in here for a moment and see what the audience has to say. They've got some questions for you.
Hi,
Hey,
guys.
Jess, how you doing?
Fine, thanks. Nice to meet
Hey,
you.
what's going
guys.
on, Jessica? How are you?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Okay,
meet
I
you.
have some questions. Robert wants to know if there's any plans for a U.S. tour.
Well, we actually did some dates, about a week and a half ago. We went across Texas and Louisiana. Next week, actually, we're going to Illinois, Wisconsin,
Indianapolis.
And we're probably around this Mad Monster convention who are going to premiere the Dwellers film in February. We're looking at routing some dates, probably up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So, in this day and age, I think, with COVID, the days of the 40 date, 6-week tour just doesn't fly right now. So we found a way to kind of just, carve in and grab these little regions, kind of do them one at a time like that. So yes, it is a US tour. It just might take a year to do it.
Exactly. We just kind of figured with no cover. I mean, look, we originally were going to put our real studio record out on Halloween. That was originally our plan, and then COVID hit. So no cover just kind of became this fun thing to fill time. But the reality is, by the time this thing's over, the new record's going to be out. So we're just kind of taking this time to jump in where we can as safely as we can, play a handful of shows. We're just going out and basically just being a cover band, man. We're playing all this no cover stuff. Obviously, we play Simple Truth and Vultures and some of our original stuff. But for the most part, it's just kind of playing stuff off a no cover. And, we play Over Now, our Post Malone cover. But again, it was just kind of this one fun little window where we can really kind of go out and just play these no cover songs that we really won't have again, So
funny, growing up as a cover musician, you can't wait to have your own songs. And after having 40 years of that, now it's fun to just be a cover musician again.
Right.
Full circle.
There it is.
That's it.
That's it right there.
That's pretty cool.
It hit me when Tom was talking. It's kind of like I was probably to Tom, me and Megadeth was to Tom his inspiration to move to LA. The same way Def Leppard was my inspiration. I saw that On Through the Night record. My drummer in my band in Minnesota, he walked it in the door. I was probably 15, he was 16, and he was flipping out because he was blown away by Rick Allen's drumming. He's got this, those first couple records, when he had all his full faculties, obviously they made records a little differently then because they were, recording a full kit and everything. But there's kind of two Rick Allens, there's the one obviously when he had all of his faculties, and then the one after his accidents, and then both are great and kind of two different, it kind of defined two different eras of Def Leppard in my opinion. But that On Through the Night record, man, he is just, the stutter kick thing that he does and just, the sound of his drums. I mean, he's, and I think he was like 16. So my drummer's like, oh my God, these guys are only like 16. I think the singer's 19. It's like, and I tell you, it was my inspiration. It was like, I can do that. Like we're doing that right now. My bands, Def Leppard made it just young enough and approachable enough that it was quite honestly, it was a vision that was like, made it all possible. Then of course go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and that story, David telling me that story and knowing that, and kind of Megadeth doing that same thing for me, is why we use the cover we did. It's an homage to Def Leppard and their place in David's story, and people don't get it. People go, oh my God, you ripped off a Def Leppard cover. No, it's an homage to a very specific time and a very specific inspiration. Like all of these songs on this record were to me and David, and Def Leppard as a band were very important to both me and David in different periods. But I mean, like On Through the Night was the first Def Leppard record I heard sitting in my dad's basement listening to it and holding that cover in my hands, and I could never forget that feeling. And that's why we use that cover. That's kind of an homage, to that. And yeah, but that's really David telling me that specific story is the reason I came up with that concept for the cover. And we used it, because they were, and that record was so instrumental to all of these songs on this record and our growth and David's growth. And, again, it's just so important to this whole story,
That's great. That's a great story, actually.
Incredible.
Don't be surprised if Tom's solo album is a picture of So Far So Good So What with his face over Vic. Right?
Right.
His homage.
A little CGI work. It'll be good, man.
Yeah, there it is, right there.
There's my solo album right there.
Yeah.
Jess, you got anything else for the guys?
Yes. Brenda wants to know, growing up, did you guys have strong parental support doing what you guys love, or was it a uphill battle for you guys?
I did actually. I think rock and roll by its nature is always supposed to piss your parents off and scare your teachers and make the Sunday school teacher run to the hills. That's especially like the little town I grew up in. I grew up in literally Mayberry. It's a wonderful little town. The people are Minnesota nice. They're just as sweet and kind as they can be. And so, they're probably, and my family was a very respected family. The Ellefson farm has been there since the 1800s.
Nice.
It's been a successful farming operation, one of a handful of families that have, it's been run well, and it's been successful. So, it's held in regard in the community, and my dad and mom, my mom sang in the church choir and all this kind of stuff. So, when all of a sudden that one Ellefson kid, meaning me, is off growing his hair long, getting an earring, playing rock and roll, and hanging out with a bunch of pot smoking, hell raising troublemakers, which originally I was not one of them. I did start to, when I started cracking the beers as a teenager, of course, I had my own couple little problems, nothing major. I mean, I to me, the dope and the booze, as much as I fell into it, in my late teens, and spiritually once I got out to LA, and I mean, again, 1983 Sunset Strip. I mean, it was Motley Crue. I mean, it was everything that it was Van Halen on steroids. If you could imagine that.
It's probably more Van Halen on heroin. Yes.
So,
probably a more apt description.
So, look, I fell into it for a few years, but, I've been cleaned up since 1990. So, that was many years ago. But my parents supported me. My dad told me two things. He goes, don't get on drugs and don't get your girlfriend pregnant, because if that happens, like, this is over, and he, as much as he didn't understand, he had what you would call a tin ear, meaning had no ear for the music, couldn't hold a pitch, couldn't, but he understood business. And I remember I got him tickets to go see Metallica on the Injustice for All tour, and he would like read Billboard magazine. He'd study what was kind of going on around. And, he did the best he could to kind of understand me inside of the big leagues of the music business, even after I moved to LA, and he'd always get me and Dave's face. He goes, when are you guys going to write better songs? And you need to be more popular, and you need to write more mainstream songs. He understood the path. He didn't understand sort of the artistic sentiments and growing a fan base and the organic thing that I was lucky enough to grow up with our genre. But, he understood that there was a path from here to there, and that if you wanted, this wasn't, just hanging out around the bottom and being a broke musician was not in his scope of what his son was going to be doing, So by the time we had Countdown to Extinction, and this point, we had good management, we were cleaned up, we were working like a real band. Capitol Records was really behind us. I moved out here, bought a house, had import cars in the garage, and I could call home to my dad and say, hey, come out and see my house. Like it's working out now, and so before he died in 1994, he got to see me. It's probably why he decided, okay, I could leave the planet. One son, Elliot's got the farm handled. David's finally, looks like he's going to do okay. And he was able to probably, go in peace. So that's my story with that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, kind of both. I didn't really grow up with my dad. I had a brief, period of, I met him later in my life when I was probably 8, 9, 10. And he's the one who kind of introduced me to music and took me to my first concert and my first concerts. And so, yes and no. And again, I grew up in a little different time. By the time I was doing this stuff, it was weirder, man. Like David was in the 70s where if you had an earring, you were a freak. But I mean, we were starting to get into the facial piercings and the tattoos, and people looked, I grew up in a somewhere small town where everybody kind of looked at you like a scumbag if you were into metal and hard rock, and some of the more satanic panic tendencies that come out around heavy metal at that time. So it was a little different time. I think there was a more of an innocence to when David grew up listening to Blue Oyster Cult and Nazareth and Kiss, to when, I kind of grew up in the late 80s and the early 90s and kind of came of age with all this stuff where there was a lot more. I think people looked down on it a lot more than they did then, maybe, but whatever, I mean, again, I grew up in a small town too. I was always kind of an outcast, and I'm still kind of an outcast, and, it is what it is,
Oh yeah, brother. Hell yeah. I can definitely feel that story in my youth as well, growing up in the 80s, early 80s, and feeling like, oh, you're a dirtbag if you're rocking out to, Motley Crue and, and all this is like, what are you talking about, man? This is the greatest music to hit the planet. So
You got to realize
proud
too, I don't know,
dirtbag right here.
where we, when you grow up in small towns, there's two types of music, country and western,
Yeah.
and I remember
We got both kinds.
I remember there was in Jackson there was an armory, right, and my band eventually played there. But I remember going there to like a dance with my parents and their friends, and I remember one of the neighbor friends comes over and he's kind of drunk and he's going, you could be down there making $50 tonight playing in that band. And I said, dude, I'd rather play rock and roll for free than play that stuff, and it was just not my scope, And of course, it's funny now. I'll listen for some reason. I don't know why in my car, Sirius Radio is on a country station. We got a really big country station that was owned by Buck Owens, actually, KNIX here in Phoenix, and it's one of the major tastemaker stations of country music. And it's funny, it'll be on, and I listened to it, and one thing I always appreciated about country was the lyrics. I mean, because Tom writes great lyrics. Tom can sit down and spitball a lyric. I'll strum a guitar, or we'll spitball a riff back and forth, and he can just pop lyrics out on the fly. And not everybody can do that. A lot of people I'll take it home. I do that. I got to kind of absorb it a little bit, but he's really good at that. So when I hear one thing about country, like the genre or not, you can't deny their lyric writing is incredible. It's funny. It's usually witty. It rhymes well, So I just have a good laugh today. I've been just driving around. I had country on. I was just kind of having a good laugh, going, check this song out. And it helps when you make records in Nashville. You can actually appreciate what they're doing in town. And it's interesting even with that genre, because the world, Tom's been talking about the different era he got into music, and now, we did this cover of this Post Malone song. And of course, Post is basically Michael Jackson right now. He's just
right
artist in the world. But, even, the last few years I've watched LA and Nashville basically create a bridge to each other. So the pop Ariana Grande music of, the West Coast is now synonymous in Nashville. And, Nashville records, it's not even called country anymore. Now it's just called Nashville music, the Nashville sound. And the Nashville stuff is pop music. It's pop music that'll keep a little steel guitar at one point, just kind of keep it legit. But other than that, it's amazing how it's got this sort of not quite hip hop, but this pop thing going. So it's interesting to see how everything sort of bleeds out into these different genres.
Plus, a lot of musicians are moving from LA to Nashville. A lot of people are there now. I mean, so many people.
Well, look, you can make a living there. I don't know if you're going to be a star there, because the thing about Nashville is it's always has been predicated behind a star and then a bunch of sidemen. And you can make a living as a sideman there. You can. I mean, you got to be amazing. I mean, having made records there and spent time there, we've done the last quite a few Megadeth records there, and if you're in that town playing on records, you can really play, and your name is known. You're on the call sheet to get gigs and make records, and so it's not like LA where you could go and if you kind of had the right tattoo and the right sound, and you could sort of fall in with a band. Nashville is not that kind of town. It's very professional. And I found it intimidating when we went there to do the Cryptic Writings record. I actually went and took some bass lessons. I just kind of wanted to I'd been on the road and making Megadeth records, and I was like, I'm going to Nashville where there are now some of the greatest bass players, a lot of the hot shots from LA when all the, Michael Jackson and Madonna and all that stuff kind of dried up in LA. Those guys making those records all moved to LA, Dan Huff being one of them. And he was producing that Megadeth record. And I thought, Dan is literally one of the greatest guitar players on the planet. And I studied, I brushed up. I was like, what? I can't walk in there just being a thrash metal bass player. Like, I really got to go back to pulling out my jazz band chops. I need to have a whole quiver of a bag of tricks handy right here, because I might need them. And I needed them on Cryptic. I definitely needed them on the Risk album. That was not an easy record to make. And that was a painful record, man. There's some records that are easy. This was probably the most fun record I've ever made, because it was just great songs with my friends, and we're just rocking, and we're all kind of feeling the same love. The Risk album was probably one of the most difficult, painful and unenjoyable records I've ever made, quite honestly. You know, transitions in the band, transitions in the genre, transition in what was going on around us, and us trying to figure out how to navigate that, and somehow, you know, so that's the thing with music is there's some things you can control from within, and then there's a bunch of shit out there that you have no control over, you know. I mean, nobody saw Nirvana showing up, and I tell you, when the day that showed up, that was a whole new day for heavy metal, you know. And I'm lucky to be in one of the few bands that survived it, you know. And I love Nirvana. I love Nevermind. I love those couple records. I think they're friggin' awesome. I mean, I'm a fan of those records, and I know that's illegal to say for a heavy metal guy, but I actually like those records. But you know, it was definitely a career game changer for sure.
Oh yeah, it changed a lot.
Well, you know what's funny about that though is people always, you know, when they look back on that and kind of talk about it in retrospect, they act like Nirvana just came out and then metal is dead. No, there was a really awkward like 5 years where metal and Nirvana, you know, where Pantera and Nirvana and Temple of the Dog and all these bands just, I mean, look, the first time I saw Soundgarden was opening for Skid Row. You know what I mean? It wasn't just this immediate thing where Nirvana came and the Giants toppled. It was this 5-6 year period where part of it, a lot of the metal bands at the time, Metallica cut their hair and put fucking makeup on. And I think a lot of those bands did a lot of the damage to themselves by trying to fit in with those bands instead of continuing to do what the fans loved in the first place. I honestly think that some of those bands making some of those decisions, trying to be more in line with that stuff, hurt them more than Nirvana or those bands actually did, you know?
And a lot of that music was very bloated. And I'll never forget, there was a moment we were working on a song and we got to a certain part of the song and Dave and Marty were discussing who's going to play the solo. And I remember I just said, why does there have to be a solo here? Like, why does it, you know, it's kind of the obligatory inter solo here, you know, and I was kind of looked at like an outcast, but, you know, it turned out I was thinking along the lines of where music was heading. Yeah. And at some point there has to be this kind of disruption to the cycle. You know, why does everything have to always follow a format? And Megadeth didn't fall prey to it, really. I happily can say, but you know, when you listen to like Hair Nation or something on Sirius, you know, great music. I drive around, I listen to that. I love those songs, but you listen to it and you go, you know what? It all sounded like that for a period. And a Nirvana and a Pearl Jam come along and they buck the system and it changes it. And let's face it, they, you know, Tom, you talk about the music you were sort of chagrined for in Green Bay, you know, but you're right. Once, you know, 9 Inch Nails and a lot of these younger, darker, you know, really kind of depressing, that was the voice of a generation. And I remember feeling that way. I was newly sober, man. I was an angry freaking newly sober guy, you know, for as Minnesota nice as I was raised. When I was coming off my heroin addiction, man, I was not a happy guy. I was fucking pissed off. I was really in a dark place and trying to be sober, being on tour, touring Rust in Peace for 1.5 years. And, you know, I just remember, I loved it. I remember coming home after we had Ellefson Chains opening for us on some shows throughout Europe. And I loved their sound. It was darker. It was tuned down. It had weight to it. And I remember tuning my guitar down at home and going, oh my God, that's how they do that. And bar chording. My fingers went to the same place on the guitar, but because the tuning was different, new music came out of it. And I went, I love this. I totally get why people are doing it. And that's why for that, like what Tom was saying, for the next decade, people started writing songs, just taking a guitar and putting it in a different tuning. It just new stuff happened.
Yeah.
And
well, and it's funny, and that became the standard. And now over the last decade or even less than a decade, you know, all these young kids and bands are going back and discovering E flat and standard tuning and thrash. And it's funny because that became the standard of everything. And then it got into the lower tunings and the detunings like Korn and that kind of stuff and Fear Factor, and everybody got into that. And now it's kind of made this weird transition back to kids discovering standard tuning and E flat, and you know, this kind of resurgence of thrash that everybody's, you know, it's funny how cyclical the music business is. Like something's got to come and make the dinosaurs extinct, and then all of a sudden everybody discovers the dinosaurs and how awesome they were, and then everybody's doing that again, you know.
That's basically Greta Van Fleet, right? Greta Van Fleet sounds like Led Zeppelin, you know, and people are like, oh God, it's this great new sound. It's like, wait a minute, what? You know?
Well, that's why I kept one bullet belt in all my stretch. I knew
You're a smart man. I mean, look, in the 80s, every band, I mean, look, think about it. Bonham, Kingdom Come, there was a whole, everybody sounded like Led Zeppelin. Every band in the 80s, for the most part, either sounded like Aerosmith, Van Halen, or AC/DC. You know what I mean? That was it. You could look at every band in the 80s and they were either a product of Boston, AC/DC, Van Halen, or Led Zeppelin. And you could pretty much look, and even now you can kind of look at them and pick which one it was, you know? But
that's true.
You know, being on Jack FM, it's exciting for me because I get to watch the trends in the music and especially the interaction with the listeners and stuff. And it really has reverted back to requests and people wanting that early 80s rock. And we're getting away from the Pearl Jams and the Nirvanas and even some of the Disturbed stuff. And we're getting back into, early Crew and Megadeth, Metallica, early Metallica. And you can just watch the trends.
Yeah, and I've been saying that for, I did some, obviously I did some radio stuff and there was a couple of stations I did some stuff at. And, again, I was telling them and preaching to them 10 years ago, you know what? Classic active. That's the next format. It's going to be moving back into the 80s stuff. And then a couple years later, a lot of the major rock formats, you listen to them, that's what they are. They're this kind of classic, obviously, has become now 70s and 80s rock. You know what I mean? So again, and a lot of the stations now are sort of in that format where they're playing the old Motley Crue records and Guns N' Roses and Poison and whatever else, but they're still, exactly, I think they're kind of moving more and more away from the 90s, the Bush and the Nirvana and the, again, which all that stuff's cool, but honestly, like me, I'm so sick of hearing it on the radio because that's been the recurrence for the last 20 years, you know what I mean? Now, I kind of like that they're digging back into the earlier stuff. Radio's cyclical too, you know what I mean?
It's funny. I remember Tom speaking about No More Mr. Nice Guy. I remember when we did that for the Shocker film. They, Megadeth wasn't really on the radio, so they would come out of it. They'd go, and that was a cover of No More Mr. Nice Guy. Next up, The Weather. And they wouldn't even say Megadeth. They legitimately wouldn't say Megadeth. It was too distasteful and too hardcore. So on all these big P1 mainstream rock stations, they literally wouldn't say Megadeth. And of course now, after all these years, we're in the classic rock band.
now Megadeth is so tame in comparison as a name and a concept. It's funny because it used to be so radical, and now it's just it's funny how that shit changes, now it's it's such a commonplace part of pop culture, it's like my grandma knows who Megadeth is,
Right. We were laughing this morning because we had Into the Mystic followed by Symphony of Destruction and then followed by Disturbed, Sounds of Silence today on the radio, all within 30 minutes of each other. And I'm thinking, wow, this wouldn't have happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago.
Family entertainment, I remember me and Marty Friedman went down to go see Kiss, right? Because he lived here in Phoenix at the time. This was 1996, right? So they put the makeup on. So we go back down to see our heroes and Kiss, and it, it was basically the Kiss Alive 2 set and everything. And we kind of knew the Kiss guys a little bit too, but you're sitting there, we're second row, dead center, like real fanboys, and sitting there going, oh my God, there they are, our heroes, So we're watching, but there's a part of us because now we're professionals and we've been to the big dance ourselves, so you kind of know what's behind the curtain of Oz, you know how it works. But yet you're kind of taken back in time to oh my God, there's our heroes. And, but it's funny at that time, by that time, I don't know if Slipknot had come out yet, but there was so much darker, heavier stuff. And I remember, back in the 70s, Kiss was about as dark and, Knights in Satan's Service, you know what I mean? It's fire, spitting blood. And it was all demonic. Now we're watching it. It's like Disney Kiss.
Yeah. Now I remember 10 years ago, man, maybe more. I went with Mark Weiss. Kiss headlined the Kiss FM, the pop radio station in LA. Kiss headlined their Kiss Fest. But no, the Kiss FM. It was
Kiss FM. That's right.
It was Christina Aguilera. It was all these Ricky Martin, and then Kiss. But I remember I was backstage and Kiss came in off the helicopter with Doc McGee, and I'm like, that is the most fucking rock and roll thing. I'm like, oh, hey, Doc. And it was just so fun, man. It takes you back to that moment of holy shit, you know?
How does that even transpire? Ryan Seacrest is choking on his spit.
But that was exactly it. It was totally all day. It was like Ricky Martin and Christina Aguilera and all these pop acts, and Kiss was the headliner. But it was awesome because, like I said, I was there with Mark Weiss and he was shooting it. So I was kind of sitting there in the photo pit, just looking up at Gene Simmons, going, "Holy shit!" You know what I mean? It was a pretty surreal experience, you know. But thank you,
Right.
Kiss FM.
Yeah.
Did
Shout
we
out
scare
to Kiss.
Jessica off here or what? Sorry, we didn't let her
put
get
her off?
one question in.
Yeah, she's getting more questions. She'll be back in with us here.
Right.
So
I wanted to ask you, David, real quick. Do you get back to Minnesota, and is the family farm still going?
Family farm is still there. Yep.
Cool.
And well, you know, Tom and one of the board members of our foundation were crafty enough to put together the official David Ellefson Day on October 9th back there. So they had the mayor proclamated it in the county ledger forever and for always. So October 9th is David Ellefson Day. So we didn't get back to this year, obviously, because of COVID. We were talking about trying to do some tour dates around there, and obviously it just was prohibitive. But, you know, to have that date there now, you know, is obviously a cool thing. And we have a coffee, or Ellefson Coffee Co. We have a presence back there at Cat's Hog Heaven, which is a really successful barbecue restaurant there on Main Street. So we've got a little museum there, and our coffee is sold there. So yeah, there's a presence there. You know, my mom, my dad, my brother are gone. I still have nephews there. And of course, friends around the area. You know, my good friend Greg Handevit, who we were in the bands together. You know, we called him up to sing and play on "Love Me Like a Reptile" on the No Cover record. You know, so there's still buddies in the area that we try to see. You know, we get up to Mankato. You know, we see our friends at radio there, and we've popped in there to play some shows. And you know, so we're definitely friends to the area for sure.
Cool. That's cool.
awesome. So Tom,
Yes.
brother, we're lucky to have you. Let's talk a little bit about this. You suffered heart failure during the making of the album.
I did. My there is actually a fail reel of our album, and my heart is on it. It's like fail. I did, man. Right in the middle of making this record, my heart stopped, and you know, appropriately, man. I mean, it just, I go and go and go and go, and thankfully, you know, they managed to revive me, but it was a pretty scary, you know. And again, and then there was a week where I was pretty, you know, kind of out of it, and then I came back and dove right back into this, and yeah, it was a pretty scary thing to deal with, and you know, it's not my first brush with death; it's actually my second, you know. So but again, something like that just renews your vigor for what you're doing, and it's like, look, you know, if I would have gone when I went and it was my time, this record was 80% done, and I left this amazing legacy of all this great shit we did in this killer record. But tell you what, I'm happy to be back, and I got to finish it my way and really see it through. And now we're going to get to finish, you know, the Ellefson studio record. And again, man, to me, yeah, I always joke around now and say I feel like I'm in the bonus round now. So everything else is just kind of extra, but that's, you know, why I'm pushing so hard to get all this stuff done and just make it the best it can be, because you never know when your number is going to get pulled, man. I mean, one day I'm walking through my living room, the next minute I'm on the ground and in a hospital bed, you know, and you never know.
So did anything happen in that time? And you were out for a while. It stopped on like an NDE. Anything you can tell us?
I mean, look, I was pretty much non-responsive for, I believe, 10 plus minutes. I mean,
That's
basically
a long time.
from my house to the hospital. And funny enough, they told me, you know, so my doctor at the hospital knew who I was, and he was like, no way, you know, no way in fuck I'm letting Tom Hazard die on my watch, and whatever. So it's kind of a cool little weird movie moment, I guess, but that was told to me secondhand. I obviously was not conscious, but yeah, I mean, like I live, you know, a good 10 minutes from the hospital, 8 minutes from the thing, was right up the street, but they, you know, were working on me in the ambulance. They got me back to the hospital. They finally got me going again and stabilized, and yeah, so it definitely could have went the other way. I mean, if I would have been home alone or there wouldn't have been people here, I would not be here for sure. I mean, it was just the right confluence of circumstance where, you know, there was just people here in the house, and you know, the ambulance got there in time and got me there, and I had great doctors who worked on me, and now I have an Ironman upgrade. I got a pacemaker put in, you know, so. And again, I was a little nervous about going out and playing shows, man. When something like this happens, it just, changes everything. You just don't know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
I didn't know what it was going to be like going on stage and singing. I didn't, you know what I mean? It was kind of, I was very tentative, and we went out and we played these shows, and it was great, and we killed it. And so thankfully, again, everything kind of works like it should, and there's no, real, I feel the same. You know what I mean? So it's thankfully I'm very blessed in that. So happy to be here.
So No Cover is dropping on November 20th, right?
Yes.
November 20th,
Yep.
and it's got all kinds of stuff on there. I mean, Ozzy Over the Mountain. I mean, that was a killer track.
Yeah, obviously you can go to Ellefson.com. Here's the album cover here. In
Yeah,
stores 11/20.
Yeah, look, you can go to our social media, I think on combatrex.com. I'm pretty sure it's up on most of the sites now for pre-order too. It'll be on all the digital outlets. So we actually just did a deal with Ear Music. Ironically, we're actually on the same label as Def Leppard now. Def Leppard now is Cooper, and they're a amazing worldwide, basically major label based in Germany. And so we just did a deal with them for not only No Cover, but our Ellefson studio record next year. So very thankful working with them. World Records in Japan. So, our studio record, actually, I think, Ear Music is going to distribute physically worldwide. And again, so we've really formed a really great partnership with Ear Music, and they've been wonderful, just killing it on press and tons of interviews. And we have our great team, Melody and Jody and Shauna, and everybody has been setting everything up, doing everything and making us look good and setting everything else up for us. But yeah, man, there's so much cool stuff on this record, so many cool guests.
Yeah.
I mean, we did a Free Wheel Burnin'.
Yeah.
Tear It Loose with Eddie Ojeda from Twisted Sister. Love Me Like a Reptile with Doro. Holiday in Cambodia. Tons of stuff, man. You can find the track list online. But Charlie Benante's on 3 tracks. Dave Lombardo's on it. Jason McMaster from Dangerous Toys. Doro. Frank Hannon and Troy Laketta from Tesla. Bumblefoot, obviously, who's technically in our band anyway. Dirk from Megadeth, Dave Alvin from White Trash, Al Jorgensen from Ministry, Brandon Yeagley from Crowbot. We were just so blessed and so many awesome people. Andy James, who just got announced as the new guitar player in Five Finger Death Punch, Gus G, Dave McLean. I mean, the list just goes on. And Chuck Beeler, Jimmy DeGrasso. 3 of the Megadeth drummers are on this record, man. It's really. We really managed to, get there's some real cool pieces of David's legacy on here between Greg Handevitt and Chuck Beeler. And obviously Doro, Warlock toured with Megadeth. There's so many little connections to all these things and on this record. And obviously getting Chuck Beeler to play on it. He played on Love Me Like a Reptile, and we did Nazareth Love Hurts. He played on both of those. I mean, it was really such an honor to get to play with all these amazing musicians who are, friends. And then to get these guys like Chuck Beeler and kind of drag them kicking and screaming out of retirement or, semi-retirement, it's fun, man. It was really cool to all the nods to the legacy, between the cover and some of the people that played on it. I mean, it's like a Marvel movie. There's all these fun little Easter eggs all over this record, man, just waiting for people to find them,
It was funny is when I first got the emails over and I was talking with your people and I saw the album cover. I was like, isn't that Def Leppard? And I started looking at it. She's like, oh, no, it's an homage. And I was like, wow, this is so freaking awesome. And then we heard the tune. Robbie and I sat back and listened, and fuck, dude, it was like home. It's like a soundtrack of your life kind of song. You know what I mean? It just feels, it just hits.
Gentlemen, I got some football I got to go get caught up on. So I'm going to jump. Good hanging with you guys for the last hour. I appreciate it. So, thanks for having us on. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, my brother.
All right, cool.
Absolutely. I'm going to share your links, David, for your
coffee.
Your
look, if she's got a few more questions, I can hang out for a couple more minutes. I don't watch football, so.
All right, cool. David, we appreciate you, brother. Stay in touch, man.
Yep, have a good one. Tom, we'll be talking later as always.
All right, buddy.
You guys, thanks.
All right, brother. All right. So Tom, I think Ella, we're going to bring in Jessica for a couple more questions here because there's definitely more out there.
And then they're all questions for David. But the sad thing is I can probably answer them. Like me and David have done so many of these things.
It's all good.
We have done so many of these things.
Sorry to bump you earlier.
That's okay. That's okay. I was writing down some questions.
All right, good. What do we got? What do we got? We got some good
Okay.
stuff, right?
So, yeah. So, let's see. Jennifer wants to know, oh, sorry. It's Dale. Sorry. Dale wants to know if you guys ever played at Ozfest.
Megadeth did play at Ozfest. We didn't. Megadeth did. Megadeth played on Ozfest 98, I think. But yes, Megadeth absolutely played on Ozfest, and I saw them there, and it was great. It was kind of the original period before David left the band. And yes, Megadeth did play at Ozfest.
That's great. And this question is pertaining to your album coming up. Jennifer wants to know, how did the group decide what would be the first single from the No Cover album?
You know what, honestly, technically the first single was Wasted, the Def Leppard song. And it was just really fitting because, again, with the cover and the vibe of the album, it was just kind of literally, it was kind of like from the minute we recorded it, we were like, this has to be the first single. And again, with the cover and just the whole presentation, I mean, again, the whole thing is just kind of based around that homage and love to Def Leppard. So I think releasing Wasted as the first single was kind of a no-brainer. We had actually originally intended on doing a video for Wasted. We just ran out of fucking time. Before you knew it, I mean, I had my heart attack, my heart failure, and by the time I recovered from that, we were in LA shooting the Off Zane video with Al Jorgensen. You know what I mean? So we were originally going to do a video even for Wasted. We just kind of ran out of time. This whole thing was such a quick timeline, you know. But yeah, I was like, that's sort of I mean, I think Wasted was kind of the obvious choice from the beginning, you know, to be the first real single, you know. And look, Nights with Alice Cooper was amazing and really supportive, and they premiered it for us, and they loved it. And Kat Turman over there and Alice are good friends, and you know, they've been super supportive of the record. We can't thank them enough for that.
Great. And also, how was it making the your new album, No Cover, and how was it working with a different artist?
You know, it was great. I mean, a lot of the stuff, I mean, if we always talk about this, we would have made this record 20 years ago. It would cost us $2 million. You know, we have like 40 guests all over the world. Our guitar players in Italy, you know, I'm in Wisconsin, Dave's in Phoenix, Bumblefoot's in New Jersey, you know, all the guests. I mean, Charlie Benante's in Chicago. Everybody's kind of spread all over the world, man. So it was really just a fun it was, you know, a lot of the collaboration, me and David produced it together, but, you know, a lot of the kind of wrangling of the guests and certain things I kind of was in charge. It was great. I mean, it was really so painless and so easy. Everything just came together. I mean, originally this, you know, it was supposed to, we talked about doing like a 5-song EP, and then it turned into a full-length record, and then it turned into a double 19-song 2 CD, 2 vinyl, you know what I mean? So it was just that effortless and flawless that it just kind of kept falling together, and more guests kind of came in line. I'd be like, oh, let's get this guy. And David would go, hey, Dave Lombardo said yes. And then it was figuring out where they would fit in and what they'd play on. Some people were kind of obvious. Like, I mean, the decision to do the Tear It Loose, the Twisted Sister song, was I said to David, I'd really like to do a Twisted Sister song. I said, I'm going to call Eddie Ojeda and see if he'll do it with him. And I called Eddie Ojeda, and I had mentioned it, and he said, yeah, let's do Tear It Loose. And I'm like, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? Honestly, my choice probably would have been Burn in Hell or something off Stay Hungry, because as much as I love all the Twisted Sister stuff, Stay Hungry was kind of like my seminal record. But, you know, Tear It Loose was still such a perfect choice, because it fits in that kind of new wave of British heavy metal period that a lot of this stuff is in. And I think our version of that, now in retrospect, I wouldn't trade that for anything, because it just turned out so fucking cool. And I think it was the perfect choice. And again, some of these decisions came from guests being on them, like me calling Eddie Ojeda and him saying, yeah, bro, let's do Tear It Loose. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you know? So it was great though. Everybody on it. I mean, again, I made, you know, so many new friends like Brandon Yeagley from Crowbot and some of these other people that sort of were referrals from other people. Andrew Freeman from Last in Line sang on a bunch. And you know, it was really cool. So there's a couple songs you mentioned, Over the Mountain. So I think I sing on 15 songs on the record, kind of either the lead vocals. There's a couple of them, like me and Mark Slaughter, kind of, there's a bunch of duets, like me and Mark Slaughter kind of duet on Say What You Will. He does the first verse, I do the second, we do the chorus together. Same way me and Al Jorgensen do on Off Zane. Same way me and Doro do on Love Me Like a Reptile. And then there's a couple things like Riff Raff with Jason McMaster. Originally, I did vocals for it. And then Jason went and did his. We were going to kind of do the same thing. And Jason's were so cool. Like, I don't know if you know Jason, but Jason was born to sing fucking Bon Scott, man. That's what he does. And when I heard his, I was just like, I'm not even going to sing on this. Let's just let Jason do the lead vocals. I'm a little bit in the chorus, you know, behind him, you know, going, riff, ram, you know what I mean? But other than that, it's all McMaster, you know, and there's a couple of these, like Over the Mountain, which is Andrew Freeman. But I was going to say, it's funny enough, it was my idea to do that song. I love that album. I love that song. I bugged David and insisted we do it. And then I was supposed to go track my vocals and I didn't get a chance. And then my heart thing happened. So I'm like, fuck, and I still had 2 or 3 songs that I had to finish. So I'm like, fuck it, we'll just put Andrew's version on there. So again, I didn't even end up singing on that one. Sweet Essay, which was Todd Kern's, another one of the ones I was going to throw some stuff on it too. And Todd just did such a killer job that I'm like, I'm not going to touch that. We'll just let Todd sing that, you know? And then the hidden bonus track on the record is actually another Cheap Trick track. We did Downed, but it's actually Chip Zanoff singing it. And,
Chip, cool.
And it was amazing. I mean, look, Chip is Cheap Trick. He's like a one-man Cheap Trick. So that's actually the hidden bonus track on the record is, you know, Chip, and actually funny enough, Drew Fortier, our friend who did Dwellers, he plays guitar on it. And I think Vin Dombrowski from Sponge actually does some vocals on it. So yeah, I think I sing on 15 of the 19 songs on the record, you know, either all or, you know, the lead vocal on it, you know, but it was definitely a very collaborative, cool process, man.
Yeah.
Sounds a lot of fun. Yeah. Can't wait to hear it, to get it. November 20th, you said?
November 20th, worldwide.
Wow, that's great. Great. One more question. So did you do anything fun for your birthday?
You know what? I really didn't. I went out to dinner with my buddy, and my buddy Rocky actually bought me, one of my friends came over Saturday and brought me a bunch of Kiss stuff, which is amazing. And then I went out and had dinner with her. And then yesterday, my friend Rocky, I hung out with my kids a little bit, and then my friend Rocky came over, and he bought me a Kylo Ren, like I posted a picture on Facebook today, but the effects lightsaber that lights up, and it's awesome. I wanted it so bad when it came out, but it was like $400 or some obscene amount of money, so I never bought it. And he kept telling me about this mysterious gift he got me all week, and then he shows up with that yesterday. I was just like, oh. So yeah, and then we went out and had dinner, but I mean, like it was pretty low key. I think me and David are gonna celebrate again next week when we're kind of on tour and we're together and with the band and with, you know, Melody and everybody kind of from our camp who will be here. I mean, you know, it was fun, but it was low key. I just kind of hung out with my kids a little bit and went out with my daughter and hung out and drove around and went and had dinner with a buddy. You know, the older you get, birthdays become less. I mean, honestly, to me, it's always the coolest thing on my birthday is always the 9,000 people that, you know, the first text I got was from Frank Bello from Anthrax, and I got an email from Dax Nielsen from Cheap Trick. And then, you know, I mean, again, it's just the mind-blowing outpouring of like texts and emails and calls from people that were like my idols, and, you know, and the 9,000 people that post on my Facebook wall. I mean, to me, like, as you get to be an adult and your birthdays, you know, aren't really as exciting anymore. That's the stuff that really hits me, man, when you get that just outpouring of, wow, people actually do kind of like me or like me enough to pretend to like me on my birthday. So.
Right.
Special. Thank you,
Thanks,
Tom.
Jess.
Thank you. Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks.
You know, Tom, we had a guy on a couple of weeks ago that's in a really kick-ass band. He's actually in the audience right now. His name's Craig Arts.
Okay.
And Craig's in a band called A Fall to Break. And they're a kick-ass band. In fact, Robbie did some guitar work on one of their songs that we premiered last week on the show. He has a question for you. He wants to know, what's the best way for a band to be heard by you?
Send me something to listen to. I guess that's the easiest way. I don't know. I mean, look, you know, like, people can find me. It's not like I'm hiding. I mean, I have social media pages. You can hit me up. If you can get my view notes. I mean, look, the best way to get to an A&R guy is always through a mutual friend or a mutual acquaintance or something like that. But look, yeah, usually when people hit me up on Messenger, if I see it, I'll respond and I'll check stuff out. Or, you know, I mean, again, you know, find me on social media, be cool, and, you know, strike up a conversation. And, you know, chances are, you know, 9 times out of 10, if somebody sends me something, I'll check it out, you know. Obviously, I'm ridiculously busy and have my head up my ass, 9 days out of 10. But if you catch me on the 1 out of 10 that I'm not, the chances are pretty good I'll check it out.
So you're saying if he sends it 10 days in a row, one of those days you'll catch it.
There you go. You got it. You're a smart man. And he would not be the first, I assure you.
That's what I told him. I go, keep hammering it, keep sending it to people. I go, until they tell you no, there's a yes in there somewhere, What are you gonna do?
I mean, like the reality is, like, I mean, when you're a new band right now, I mean, the reality is what you need to do is just go build your shit up yourself. Make a video, make great content. Now more than ever, artists have the power in their hands, in their grasp, to hire someone like Melody Myers, who's amazing and does all of our videos and all of our imaging. And, again, you can do everything yourself now. You don't, you hire a great person, somebody to make a great video, make some great content, make some great stuff, and just blow your stuff up. And then you don't even need to worry about it talking to assholes like me. Just go out and do it yourself. And when you don't need anybody anymore, then guys like me will come knocking on your door and be like, hey, you guys are doing really good. You want to do something? It's a funny little trick. That's how it works.
Right.
But no, it's not. But look, I mean, the reality is it's nice. I know it, and I always try and, I always try and be cool to everybody. People reach out to me on Facebook. People send me stuff. I always try and respond when I can. I get back to people, and I know it can be a nice little morale boost for just somebody like me, even if it means nothing. Just yeah, dude, it sounds cool. Keep going, and that's why I always try and do that, man. Because a lot of people over the years have done that for me, and it was always important every time, so that's why now when I guess I'm a person who's in a sort of influential position like that, I go out of my way to try and do the same thing and pay it forward and be responsive to artists and be cool to people and check out their shit. And again, I mean, the reality is it's not going to change your life if I like your song, but the reality also is that even just a kind word like, dude, that's awesome, good job, keep going, can be the thing that keeps you doing it. You know what I mean? So, and
it's making another person aware. They're definitely worth a listen. I tell you, they do everything themselves. Craig mixes it, they write it, they did the whole thing themselves, the video, and I tell you what, it's worth a listen.
Yeah, well, send it to me. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
So you're on Dash Radio as well, right?
No, we used to be on Dash Radio, and it's so funny. I was just having a conversation yesterday about going back on Dash Radio. We were kind of, I helped run a station on there, and we were going to put our combat radio on there. And then the guy that we did our station through convinced me Dash Radio was going out of business, wasn't going to exist. He convinced me to move our combat radio over to another platform. And I love Dash, man. I still do. Chip's Enough's on there.
Yeah.
And he's doing great. And my show, I did a show on there for a long time, and it did great. Our station had great ratings, and my show did great. And, so I literally just had the conversation yesterday about trying to reconnect and bring combat, a version of combat radio or something back over to Dash Radio. Because, man, I love that platform. I always did. It was always fun when we were on it. But, the unfortunate reality is I don't have time to do a weekly show. I mean, there was a time when I was doing 3 or 4 2-hour, 3-hour radio shows a week.
Right.
But again, I think having just a station on there where other people were kind of the talent and I was just sort of in a PD role and kind of picking music and sort of, doing a show here and there. Or me and David did our show. Me and David actually were in talks last year to do a syndicated FM radio show, and we just didn't even have time to get that together. With everything going on, it's just, as much as I love radio and talking, obviously, because I can't shut up. It's such a time consuming, especially the way I do, like something like this is easy. You can just kind of talk and it's off the cuff. But I mean, my shows, if you ever heard my shows on Dash, it was super produced, lots of bumpers, movie samples. Every segment was super slick and produced. And to me, me and David did another show called Radio Combat. That was kind of a similar thing. And again, so maybe in the future, it's something more conversational like this, where there's not so much production involved and there's not so much of the, again, I guess I just said not so much production involved, you know what I mean? But yes, I would love to get something going back on Dash Radio, and I'm actually in the process of maybe trying to do that.
That was the question I had, because I do a morning show on Jack FM, and the production and, you know, being so polished and commercialized and the bumpers and liners and imaging.
And
I was like,
all of that for the record on my shows, I always do myself, you know,
So do
all of
I.
it. So, and
Yeah.
it's such a painstaking. And look, with the bumpers and all that shit, like you just kind of get a pool of them made and then you just kind of cycle them out. But it's still
Right.
a very time consuming fucking process. You know it is. So again, that's kind of why I stepped away from doing radio stuff, because it's a full-time fucking job. You know what I mean? I don't have time for another full-time job. I have like 9 of them, you know?
Right. You know a lot about the Youth Foundation, the Youth Music Foundation.
I do. I run it.
Oh,
So,
cool.
dude, I think that is so incredible, and it's something that breaks my heart. I've got 7 kids between my wife and I. We've got an
Wow.
8-year-old that is in school, and the music. What we came up in school learning how to play and getting involved in music class, it's nothing like that anymore, man. And it's not being inspired. Their creativity is just being stunted. It's really, here's a xylophone and get out of my hair for 30 minutes. You know what I mean? So I'm 100% on board with the Youth Music Foundation and making sure that the kids explore their creativity.
Yeah, and look, I think it, you know, and David's told the story a bunch of times. It's like, look, I kind of came to him one day and said, look, we should put together some kind of a charity, you know, and something that involves, you know, music. And me and David were both public school, you know, music kids, and David really, that was a big part of his musical development, was playing in the high school band, and you know, so it was really near and dear to both of us. So I kind of came up with the concept for the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation. Like David said before, me and Donnie Schoenrock and Jackson kind of came up with this whole David Ellefson Day concept and worked it out with the mayor. And then we actually went there to go launch the David Ellefson Youth Music Foundation in Jackson. And we got Jackson, ironically, and Fender to donate, and Hartkey and a bunch of our other, you know, companies to kind of donate some stuff. And we donated to the school music program. And we worked very closely. We immediately, you know, connected with the Grammy Music Education Coalition and got involved with them and their work. And it's been very rewarding, man. We've gone around the country and done stuff with them, and, you know, kind of inner city environments, and done some more rural stuff. And then obviously earlier this year, when COVID hit, I had the idea to kind of do the Schools Out initiative that we did, which was kind of giving kids lessons, and that kind of rolled into the Say Can You Stream events. And it's been a really, you know, a really fun thing. And even last year, it's so ironic, because last year, you know, we launched the foundation a couple of years ago. We were so busy, we didn't have a lot of time to really do a lot more with it. And I told David, kind of coming out of last year, look, this year I really want to put some time into the foundation. And then COVID hit, and I mean, look, that was just all the opportunity in the world I needed. And so I really dove headfirst into trying to do some of the things we did. And we, you know, we just did a you know, $1 million technology grant with our friends at Cisco, who gave us, you know, all this cool killer gear. And it's been really exciting, man. It's been a really exciting year for the foundation, everything we've been able to do. And, you know, we're looking to just keep pushing it forward and pushing it into next year, and pushing into different territories. And, you know, again, huge thanks to the Grammy Music Education Coalition. And, you know, again, it's been a very weird year, but it's been a very rewarding year for people who can pivot and figure out ways to make things work. And I think we've been some of the people that have really done that, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the purpose between what Robbie and I do now, and trying to get out there, get a positive message out there, keep people connected, and sharing in the greatest gift in life, man, which is music and art. So, Tom, I can't thank you enough for joining us, brother.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so funny. I keep saying you put corporate punishment up there. That I didn't think that website's worked in like 15 years, but it's a nice nod to my past, and I appreciate it. But it's just funny. I keep seeing it popping up, and it's like it should be combatrex.com or any of our other million. But it's awesome. I like it. It's that cool little. I mean, but dude, I love that label. And we put out some really great stuff. And my partner Eric, we had a really good relationship for a long time. And look, we did some groundbreaking stuff, and everything I did there was what led me to what I'm doing now, and everything I learned there. You know, I went from that to THC Music, and then me and David launched EMP. So, I mean, it's always a learning and evolving process from one entity to the next. And, you know, and it's funny, but you kind of learn and you build these skill sets, and you just kind of figure out how it works, and then you can just keep them. Look, if you would have told me in 2005 that I was going to start another label, I would have laughed at you, man. You know what I mean? It was not in the cards at all. You know, it was not in my thought process. But then as I got to know David, and we did some really exciting stuff with EMP. I mean, Mark Slaughter and Doyle, and we put out some really cool records with some really cool artists that I look up to, and we've been able to do some really exciting stuff. And now, you know, I mean, again, for the most part, it's just kind of combat, and you know, and again, even on EMP still, we have, you know, Supreme Unbeing, who's doing great. Their video just had 1 million views, and The Loyal Order, and They Might Be Zombies, and some of these other cool artists that are kind of more developing artists. And then obviously we've been using combat as a conduit to push the Ellefson stuff, which to me is such a fitting, you know, means to that end, you know. No
Absolutely,
cover.
brother.
Combat.
There you go.
I'll share the links on our website, our social
Please.
media pages, Twitch, obviously. And I'll just keep pushing you guys, man. Let's stay in touch. I'll send some of my info. There's other things I want to talk to you about coming up that I'd like to promote. Maybe get you on air with me during the morning show at some point. And
that'd be wonderful, man. I mean, look, I can talk. That's all I do. I can talk. So, and yeah, definitely. If you guys need anything else, hit me up. Message me on Facebook. I'll get you my email address if you don't have it. Did you guys get the full record? Do you guys still need the full? I'll send you the full record. I'll send you a download. And anything else you guys need, just stay in touch.
Cool.
all right,
Awesome.
cool. I'll push that through the networks that I've got, my brother. Thanks so much, Tom. I appreciate
Thanks, Tom.
it.
Appreciate it. Man.
Thank you guys. Have a great night. Thanks
You
for
too.
having me.
All right. Cool.
All right, so that was Tom and David. And
Yeah.
Hangout Live, brother. It's been a night, bro.
Yeah, no kidding. It went by fast. I was surprised when an hour happened already. I'm like, wow, it didn't feel like an hour.
I know. And
That's when you know it's rolling.
He had said, "Man, I got to go at an hour," and I didn't even realize that we were at an hour already.
I didn't even look to see. I mean, it went so fast. I was like, wow, that went quick.
Yeah, it did, brother.
A lot of good stuff. Well, that's when you have two guys that have so much to talk about. Of course, it's all intermingled, but there's a lot of stuff between both of them. You know, each guy's got their history and then their intermingled stuff, and it's a lot of great stuff. And I still wanted to ask him about System of a Down. I know he did something with them, and I'm a big fan, so I was kind of curious about that. And you know,
yeah, Limp Bizkit and Tom, we got to have it back on at some point. I mean, there was just so much.
Hopefully, once we're on Twitch, we can, we'll start getting some people back that went well.
Right.
Something like him would be great. Sure.
So now we've teased the whole Twitch thing for quite a while now, waiting on contracts. We actually got the contracts over. We're going over them with lawyers. That should happen at some point fairly soon.
Yeah.
People asking Robbie about Jack. How's Jack doing? There's a lot of people asking how he's doing, how he's coming through.
He's doing good. I guess I could say he did have a hip replacement. He had a hip thing in there before, but like old school bad, not. So it was a big surgery that he went through. I don't know, maybe a month ago. But I mean, I think it was a very good success. He's coming back, and luckily through this time, he can use this time to come back. But he's walking more even, which is good. He's doing good. He's moving today. He might even be driving right now.
Yeah.
He's on the road right now, moving up to Colorado. So he's got his big winter jacket on, and we'll be working over the internet a lot.
So that seems like the place to go, man. My boss just moved to Colorado. I moved out of Colorado, so maybe I'm screwy in the head. I don't know.
Who knows at this point? Who knows?
Right. All right. So let's thank our sponsors here. Let's go back here. I'm gonna have to kind of go back through these tracks because I wasn't prepared for ending so quickly. Obviously, we've got our friends over at Media Jaw, Jody Gentry and the team taking care of our website. Please go there, check it out. It's the hangout.live, and order your Hangout Live t-shirts, man. They kick ass, right?
Yeah.
Get those t-shirts. See right there. Get those t-shirts.
Get it.
All right. We've got Backbeat Music, Alexandra Cunningham and the team here in San Angelo. Can't say enough about them. Alex hasn't been feeling good lately, and that breaks my heart. So let's keep her in her thoughts. Alan and Shannon over at Full Spectrum CBD, baby. And yes, I am excited about it.
Yeah.
Full Spectrum TX.com is the website. and they're rocking with us. In fact, they just reconfirmed they're going to be with us for a while, man. So props to them. Go on their website, check them out. A lot of you have hit me up in emails and texts about how can you order. Well, it's right here, Full Spectrum CB or Full Spectrum TX.com.
For the quality stuff, get it.
Yeah, you got yours.
Yeah,
You got yours. Special thanks out to David Ellefson, and the No Cover album hits November 20th with Tom and I guess just about every single person in the rock and roll world. We got guests from everywhere, everybody.
Yep, and then I do want to shout out for Darren and Sherry that they sent 3 bottles of really delicious wine and stuff. And of course, Brad and Kim, which their wine is in quarantine.
My wine is still sitting outside in quarantine from them.
Yeah, quarantine. Mine's sitting at the front door. And of course, you got to mention the blue collar cables. I kid you not, get these blue collar cables. You get them personalized. I'm telling you, my studio is outfitted with all the blue collar. Look at that, pull off the cable. Here's a blue collar cable sitting on the floor. They have a look about them. Either you get your name put on them or the look. He super builds the ends for me because I tear them apart on stage. But I mean, like all my pedal board, my studio with snakes, everything. You talk XLR, whatever snake you need. It could be 4-channel, 8-channel. He's got them all. High end to lower quality, but not even lower quality because they're all high quality. But the cheaper ones to expensive ones, blue color cables, all made in America.
That's what's up, baby. Mark.
Right down the street from here, man. Anaheim. They're in their room. They just do all the stuff themselves, and it's quality. And if there's any problems with them, send it back and they'll fix it for you.
Wow. You know, I've got like 11 guitars in my house and I have no cables.
You might need a blue collar cable, I'm telling you.
That's what I'm saying. All right. Another shout out to Mike Gobby, obviously, for helping with tonight's connection. Love you, Mike. Thanks for that. And then last but not least, man, you.
Who?
All you guys out there watching.
Oh, them.
All them. They're out there. So do us a favor, share, like the page, build it, help us build this. Obviously, you've been with us for a while. You see where we've come from. You see where we're going. And it's just going to keep getting better and better and better and better and bigger and bigger and bigger until Robbie's head blows off.
Yeah, right.
We appreciate all of you, man. We love you all for joining us every Monday night. So you got anything else, Rob?
I think we're good.
All right. Get the No Cover album November 20th. Everywhere you look, it's going to be. We'll share the links on all of our social media and our website. Check it out. Love you. We'll see you next Monday.